Thanks, Gary. You're listening to Search the Scriptures Daily, a program in which we encourage everyone who desires to know God's truth to look to God's Word for all that is essential for salvation and living one's life in a way that is pleasing to Him. In this first segment of our program, we're currently discussing Dave Hunt's book, When Will Jesus Come?, subtitled Compelling Evidence for the Soon Return of Christ. Now, Dave, as you may recall, and I have to say may recall because you've written lots of books. And even though we've been going through this week by week, it's hard to remember titles of chapters and so on. But chapter 20 of your book is titled This Generation, and you lead off with Matthew 24, verses 33 to 34. Now let me read that for our listeners and our viewers who are seeing this on podcasting or a DVD that we sent out. So this is Matthew chapter 24, verses 33 and 34. So likewise ye, when you see all these things, know that my coming is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Well, to whom and what is Christ referring? Is it Israel or the church? Is it the rapture or the second coming?
Well, Tom, when we read the Bible, we have to be careful not just to jump to quick conclusions. Mm-hmm. We have to reason. You know, God says, come now and let us reason together. So we have to reason about this a bit. This generation shall not pass away till all these things be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, he could not have been referring to the generation that was present at that time. Now, there are those preterists who argue this. They say everything was fulfilled at the destruction of Jerusalem, A.D. 70, and so forth, and it's all over with.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me explain that term to maybe some of our listeners who've never heard it. Preterist. Yeah, it's a term used to identify those who, in their view of eschatology, of prophecy, they would say that all the prophecies, probably right up to the middle of Revelation, or the latter part of Revelation
20, I think.
Yeah, yes, Revelation 20. Of course, there's a mixed bag of preterists. Some may not go that far, but generally they would say all the prophecies have been fulfilled within the 100 years, starting with the birth of Christ and 100 years later, that they would all have taken place. Of course, the opposing view to the preterist view is the futurist view. And with regard to eschatology, the last days, prophecies, they would say that certainly certain prophecies have been fulfilled, but the bulk of them, especially with regard to Revelation, have not yet taken place, but will take place in the future. And that's the difference.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to say that all prophecies have been fulfilled. For example, if we went back to the Old Testament, we went to Jeremiah 31, God says, Israel will never be destroyed again. Jerusalem would be rebuilt and never destroyed again. Furthermore, if we went to Ezekiel 39, next to the last verse, I don't remember what the number is, I think it's 28 or something, it says that God says that he is going to bring all Jews back to Jerusalem, back to Israel, and there will not be one left anywhere that hasn't been brought back. Okay, now that certainly hasn't happened, never happened in history, so that certainly is future. Then if you go to, Tom, I don't want to get bogged down in this, but there are so many prophecies. The Antichrist hasn't appeared, obviously. The two witnesses haven't come. Armageddon hasn't occurred. But therefore, they have to do away with Israel. So these people are replacement theologians also, that the church has replaced Israel. But anyway, it couldn't have been that generation. Let's just look, Tom, at a couple of the signs that Jesus said. They asked Jesus for some signs. They say, well, let's look at it. Verse 3, tell us, when shall these things be, that is, the destruction of the temple? What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? They think these are all one event. In fact, there are three separate events, but they don't know that. But anyway, he begins to give signs. False prophets will arise, gospel of the kingdom will be preached, and wars, rumors of wars, nation rise against nation, and so forth.
Well, David, as you pointed out many times, it begins with, take heed that no man deceive you.
Well, that
so
has
religious
been
deception.
fulfilled. Right. But here are some things that have not yet been fulfilled. It says, except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. Now, I don't think that all flesh was in danger of being wiped out with bows and arrows and swords and spears at the destruction of Israel in 70 A.D. He says, not since the beginning of the world, in verse 21 he says, then shall be great tribulation such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. Well, Josephus tells us about 1.2 million Jews were slaughtered there when Jerusalem was taken in AD 70. But Hitler killed 6 million. So you couldn't say that fulfilled it, because surely something worse for the Jews and the Christians. And, of course, Hitler killed millions of Christians. So did Mao, Stalin, and so forth. So that could not have been the greatest. So just on a simple logic, he could not have been speaking to that generation that was hearing his words at that time. Then there are those who say, and some people thought that this was the at least implication of the late great planet Earth. Hal Lindsey denies that he intended this, but I'm old enough to remember, Tom, and I was a Christian in those days. Well, the rapture is going to occur. But now this generation is not going to pass away. It didn't mean the generation at that time. Well, it must mean the generation when Israel is reinstated as a nation. So in 1948, I'm thinking of the 70s now, 1948, 40-year generation, that's 1988, subtract a 7-year Great Tribulation, wow, 1981, that's when the rapture will occur. Tom, I remember very well, the bumper stickers, drive at your own risk, I'm leaving in the rapture. Tom, everybody was talking about the rapture, and they used to ask me in those days, what do you think? I would say, well, I long for the rapture. I expect the Lord any day as we're supposed to, but I don't think he's coming yet because, well, we went over to verse 44. He says, therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. And I used to say, too many people are looking for him now. He's going to come when very few people are looking for him, okay? And that, of course, goes together with this verse that you brought to our attention, Tom. So,
well, David, also, at least on the surface, doesn't it seem like a contradiction of sort? Matthew 24:42 says, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come, and then 44, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Isn't that sort of a...
But verse 34 says, verse 33 says, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. So he's talking about a coming that everybody will know it's going to take place. He must then be talking about another coming when nobody or very few will even suspect.
For more information about the Berean call us toll-free at our order number or visit our website